Okay, so, TikTok, right? I mean, it's everywhere you look these days, and it's kind of hard to ignore all the buzz, but it's gone way beyond just, dance crazes and funny videos, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really moved into some serious territory for sure. And
We've been looking into this a lot recently,
Yeah.
especially these excerpts about Trump and TikTok, and you quickly realize it's about way more than just another app on your phone.
oh, absolutely. It's a whole can of worms, this one.
So that's what we really want to dig into today, right? We want to cut through all the noise and figure out what's actually important here for, everyone who's trying to understand what's going on with this whole TikTok situation.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to get bogged down in all the technical stuff or the day-to-day news. We want to get to the heart of it.
Right. So basically, we're talking about this ongoing debate about TikTok, specifically these national security concerns that keep coming up because of its ownership by ByteDance, that Chinese company. And this has led to, a lot of developments. But the one we want to start with is this recent thing with former President Trump and this potential executive order that kind of throws a wrench in the whole push to ban the app.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
So can you give us some context here? What's the big picture with this executive order?
Well, imagine this. Okay. Trump is back in the White House, second term, and in this scenario, he's reportedly thinking about issuing this executive order that basically gives TikTok a 75-day break, a 75-day reprieve, and this would have delayed the enforcement of this bipartisan law that was actually signed by Biden.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's crazy how things have turned around, right?
Absolutely.
So remind me about this original law. It was pretty strict, wasn't it?
Yeah, so as you said, it was a bipartisan effort, and it basically said that ByteDance had to divest from TikTok's U.S. operations by January 19th of next year, 2025, or else face a nationwide ban.
Wow. So a serious ultimatum.
Yeah, no messing around.
And so Trump's solution here was this executive order, this pause button, essentially, and then it also included this pretty wild idea, the U.S. government taking like a 50% ownership stake in TikTok's U.S. business.
Right.
That's kind of unheard of, isn't it?
It's pretty unusual.
I mean, what are the pros and cons there of the government owning such a huge part of a private tech company?
Well, it's a huge question, right? And there are a lot of angles to think about. I mean, on the one hand, having the government as a part owner could give them more direct control,
Yeah.
more oversight, and that could potentially ease some of those national security concerns, at least theoretically.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And it could be seen as a way to really protect American interests.
Mm.
But then on the other hand, it raises all these questions about the government getting involved in the private sector, and how much influence they would have on this media platform, which is huge. And then there's the question of, what it would do to innovation and the market if the government's calling the shots.
Right. Is that really their role?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. And,
Yeah.
Historically, the U.S. government hasn't really taken these kinds of direct ownership stakes in big tech companies. So it could set a pretty big precedent.
Really interesting stuff. So just to be clear, this wasn't meant to be like a permanent solution, this
Yeah.
75-day thing.
No, not at all.
It was really about buying time.
Exactly. It was about giving everyone a chance to negotiate, to see if they could find a solution that everyone could live with, something that actually addresses those national security issues. And it seems like those talks have been heating up, especially with this April 5th deadline looming.
Yeah, that April 5th date keeps coming up, and there's been talk about some optimism that they might reach some kind of agreement by then, and it sounds like Oracle's right in the thick of it. They're already managing TikTok's U.S. data.
Yeah, they are.
So what makes their role so important in all of this?
Well, they've already got this relationship with TikTok. They're handling that U.S. user data storage. So they have this level of access and insight that's already there. And the report suggests that the talks have gotten pretty serious to the point where Oracle could actually oversee a bigger chunk of TikTok's U.S. operations, which would give them more power to ensure things are secure, and maybe even transparent.
That makes sense. But even with Oracle stepping up, is that enough to address the concerns about ByteDance? I mean, what about their control over the algorithm? That seems like a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's the real sticking point. Even if Oracle takes on more responsibility, there's still this fundamental question of ByteDance's influence on the algorithm. And that's the system that decides what you see on your feed, personalized content. And because it's so powerful in shaping what people are consuming, any chance of it being manipulated by a foreign power, well, that sets off all those national security alarm bells.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Then there's the question of, ByteDance and user data, even if it's stored here in the U.S., who has access to it? How is it being managed? These are big questions.
And it's not just Oracle in the mix, right? Our sources mention other companies that are kind of circling TikTok. like maybe interested in getting involved themselves.
Mm.
Although Oracle does seem to be the front runner, why would other companies be interested?
Well, TikTok in the US is huge. It's got a massive user base, tons of advertising revenue. So it makes sense that other companies and investors would want to grab a piece of that action.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the national security stuff and the regulations make it a really complicated situation. So that probably narrows down the pool of serious contenders.
Right. So let's talk about the legal battles that TikTok and ByteDance have been fighting. It hasn't been easy for the U.S. to push this divestiture thing, has it?
No, not at all. They've been pushing back hard, legally, trying to stop it.
But those rulings haven't really gone their way, have they? I remember a U.S. appeals court basically upholding the law that says they have to sell.
Yeah, you're right. The court basically said, nope, the divestiture law stands. So legally speaking, that mandate is still there. Either they sell or they face a ban.
And ByteDance's main argument in all of this has been that it's impossible, from a business and tech standpoint, to spin off TikTok's U.S. operations within the time frame without really messing things up. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. So they're saying that separating TikTok's U.S. business from the global operations is a total nightmare, they say. The technology behind it all, especially the algorithm, is super integrated, and it would be a huge headache to try to untangle it and still keep the U.S. platform working and valuable. And they're also pointing to the potential economic fallout and the hit their business would take.
Okay, I get it. But the people pushing for divestiture or the ban booms, they're not really buying it, are they? Our sources suggest they see these legal challenges as more of a delaying tactic.
Yeah, there's definitely some skepticism there.
They think ByteDance is just trying to stall.
Exactly. They think it's about holding on to that valuable U.S. market for as long as possible.
So they might be saying, yeah, okay, there are some real challenges with splitting things up, but they haven't really shown that they're actually trying to find a solution that addresses those national security risks.
That's the argument, basically, that they're just trying to run out the clock, hoping the political pressure will die down. And that brings us back to the core issue here. National security, that's what's driving all of this.
Right, that's the big one. And FBI Director Christopher Wray has been very clear about what those concerns are. What are the main risks he's talking about?
So he's pointed to two big things. First is all the data TikTok collects on millions of Americans. What kind of data is it? Where is it stored? Who can see it? Big questions. The second thing is the possibility of the Chinese government forcing ByteDance to use the algorithm, to manipulate what people see, maybe spread propaganda, influence opinions, stuff that could harm the U.S.
Oh, wow, that's scary.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And this all ties into the worries about Chinese law. It's not just about whether ByteDance wants to share data. There might be a legal requirement for them to do. So how does that change things?
Right, that's a whole other level.
Yeah. It's a huge complication because under Chinese law, there's a real chance that ByteDance could be legally forced to hand over user data to Chinese intelligence if they're asked to. And that completely clashes with U.S. ideas about data privacy and national security. It basically blurs the line between a private company and the state, which is a huge risk for American users.
So it's not just about data and influence. There's also this bigger geopolitical picture. The worry that TikTok could be used as a weapon in a crisis.
Yeah.
If things were to escalate.
Yeah, the fear is that if there's some international tension or conflict, like a situation with Taiwan, for example, TikTok could be used to spread misinformation on a huge scale, to sow discord, to mess with public trust in U.S. institutions.
It's wild.
Yeah, the worry is that this platform with its massive reach could be exploited to help a foreign power, during a really critical time.
It's a lot to think about. And alongside those national security concerns, there's also the economic impact to consider. I mean, TikTok's a big part of the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
What would a ban or a forced sale actually do?
It would be a huge deal. TikTok brings in billions of dollars in ad revenue, supports a ton of content creators and businesses. So a ban wouldn't just hurt ByteDance and its users, it would have ripple effects throughout the whole digital advertising world and the creator economy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big web.
And if TikTok were to go away or change drastically, there are some obvious winners, right? Our sources point to companies like Meta, Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Pinterest. They'd probably see a surge in users and ad money.
It's pretty much guaranteed those platforms are the direct competition in the social media and short video space. So if TikTok shrinks or disappears, it's logical that users and advertisers would flock to them. And it's interesting that those big U.S. companies haven't really challenged Trump's executive order legally, which kind of makes you wonder if they see a ban as potentially beneficial to their business.
It makes you think. And on the flip side, you've got American companies like Oracle
Hmm.
who are trying to work out a solution. They could lose big time if these negotiations go nowhere.
Yeah, for sure. Oracle's really invested in finding a way for TikTok to keep running in the US. It's a big opportunity for them, but if it all falls apart, they're going to lose out on a potentially lucrative deal.
Right. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the politics of all of this, too.
Mm.
Trump's position seems to have softened from his earlier calls for a ban, right? What's going on there?
That's a great point. Back in his first term, he was really pushing to ban Chinese-owned apps like TikTok and WeChat. Same national security concerns we've been talking about, but now it seems like he's more open to finding a compromise. What do you think is behind that?
Well, TikTok is hugely popular, especially with younger people, so that has to be a factor politically speaking, right?
Absolutely.
Especially in a divided country like ours. And, there's the economic fallout to consider, too.
Mm.
Maybe he's trying to find a way to balance those national security worries with the economy
Mm.
and maybe even think about, appealing to a broader range of voters.
That's a good point. And this change in approach hasn't gone unnoticed. Lawmakers and analysts have a lot to say about it. What are they saying?
Yeah, our sources point to a mix of reactions.
Mhm.
What are some of the main perspectives out there?
Well, some people see it as a smart move. Being practical, recognizing that TikTok is a big deal and that a ban could backfire. They think it's a more realistic way to handle the risks without destroying economic activity. But then there are others who are critical. They say it undermines the bipartisan agreement that led to that original law, the one aimed at dealing with those national security threats. They see it as a sign of weakness, giving in to foreign pressure.
So it's a mixed bag then.
Definitely.
And with this April 5th deadline getting closer, it feels like we're at a real turning point. What are the most likely scenarios here? What could happen next?
Well, based on what we know, there are three main possibilities as we approach that deadline. The first, and maybe the most likely given all the talk about optimism, is that they reach some kind of framework agreement. So this would lay out the basics of how TikTok's U.S. operations will be structured to deal with those national security concerns. But the finer details, like who owns how much of the company, well, those might need more negotiation.
Makes sense. And what if they don't reach a full agreement by April 5th?
Well, then the second scenario kicks in. They could extend the deadline. If they feel like they're making progress but need more time to iron out the details, Trump could just say, okay, let's keep talking.
And the third option? The one where things get real?
Yeah. The third possibility is that if they can't agree and there are no more extensions, that Biden-era law comes into effect, which means either a nationwide ban on TikTok in the U.S. or they force ByteDance to sell off their U.S. operations, as the law originally said.
So it's really down to the wire then. The
Right.
future of TikTok in the U.S. is hanging in the balance. The messy situation with so many factors at play. National security, legal battles, economic impacts, and then you've got the politics swirling around it all.
It's a perfect storm, and no matter what happens, whether they force a sale or tighten the regulations or even ban it completely, how this whole TikTok saga plays out is going to have huge implications for how the U.S. deals with foreign tech companies in the future, especially with the rivalry with China heating up.
It really makes you step back and think about the big picture, doesn't it?
For sure.
How do we protect national security, but also protect individual freedoms and economic opportunities in this digital world? It's a tough question. How should governments handle these global tech giants that are operating within their borders? And what about us, everyday users? What's our responsibility in understanding the benefits and the risks of these incredibly powerful tools? It's a lot to consider even after we wrap up our deep dive today.
Absolutely. These are questions that are going to stay with us for a long time.
Yeah, food for thought for everyone.